Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of our weekly Rashi study class with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
Okay, it's been a few weeks. I hope everybody enjoyed whatever they were doing last Wednesday. Someone just catch us up. Where are we? What's the scene that we're dealing with right now? We're about to go into verse 22. I did prepare the sheets for chapter 3 if we do get to it today. I have low hopes, but we might. So where are we at? What's happening in the palace? What's going on? What did we just learn? Yeah, Norm, just use a microphone.
Mordecai has learned of a plot against the king's life and has found a way to report it to Esther so that Esther will be able to report it to the king and whomever else it should be reported to. And ultimately, this will rebound to Mordecai's benefit and probably also Esther's.
Okay, that was a spoiler alert. Okay, what else do we need to remember before we go on? Anything else? That is what immediately just happened. Anything else that people want to share before we get to this next piece? Yeah, Paul. Just going to pull up the source sheet, but I'm listening to you.
Well, simply that we emphasized that Esther had not revealed her heritage.
Good. Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about, in a meaningful way, about the fact that Esther was still under the impressions and still remembered to not reveal her identity, to not reveal who she was. And we talked a lot about how she might have known that, the Hebrew that is used to get us to a place of, was she being told? Did she just remember? Was this something ingrained in her? We spent a lot of time talking about that. Okay, anything else? Great. Okay, I'm going to pull up our source sheet here so the people on Zoom can have it in front of them as well. Rick, your name is listed on my source sheet as calling on you from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I like
you want to start us off?
Gave me something to look forward to. Thank you.
Oh, good.
So I wanted to, before we were ready to go into verse 22, I wanted to go off of that same verb that we had in 20, where Esther couldn't say anything. She didn't say anything. She didn't tell. Magedet, like Haggadah, which is a very, very important verb in the Torah. You're supposed to tell your kids about the Passover, and here, Ein Esther, she had nothing to say, or she didn't say, whatever. So here in verse 22, we have Vayaged, Mordecai tells her what to say, or tells her the story about the plot and all that. Yeah. So I just wanted to point out that, and there were 3 verbs there, like Rabbi Klickfeld used to have us go into the tense of the verbs. So Vayivada is passive, right? It became known, the thing, to Mordecai, however that happened. It became known to him. And then Vayaged, Esther, that's an active verb, right? He tells her. And then when she tells the king, she doesn't Vayaged or Vataged. She doesn't tell the king, which is a different kind of way of telling a story. She says it, Vatomer. It's very personal. Yeah. It's not a Vatidaber either. She didn't speak, so it's either Vatomer or Vatidaber, but she speaks personally to the king. So I just wanted to point that out. So thank you for letting me do that.
Yeah, of course. So the point that Rick just made, I was going to make a similar, and then we'll actually read the verse. I wanted to make a similar, I want to point something out that is similar to what he just said. There are many different ways in which things are being told here. right? Many different words for things being shared or things being told or things being said. We talked a little bit about this last class, just in terms of like what can those words actually mean. But Rick is bringing in one of the words from 2 verses ago, Megillat. And then there's also the word of amar, right? In terms of something being said. We see vayaged here in our verse, right? So there's many different ways in which things are being told, but then also this vayivada, which we're going to read in just a moment, even though it doesn't mean to be said, there is an implication that something was said to then be understood, right? That it wasn't just by osmosis. So I just want us to have that in our minds in terms of tone matters, intention matters. When things are said differently, right? And therefore heard differently. And I think that's a really important piece to what is about to happen at the end of chapter 2. Did you want to say something, Larry? We're going to read it. Yeah. Well, we're going to read the verse first. Do you want to read it? Yeah. Okay. Does someone else want to read the verse? Verse 22? Okay, great. Go for it.
Okay. ויוודע הדבר למרדכי ויגד לאסתר המלכה. ותאמר אסתר למלך בשם Mordechai. And it became known, this thing, to Mordecai, and he told it to Esther the queen, who in turn Esther said to the king about this in the name of Mordecai.
Great. Anything you want to say about it before we pass it along?
No.
Okay, great. Larry, you want to go first?
Only kind of a facetious comment, because so the end of this verse in the name of Mordechai is referred to in Pirkei Avot. So in Pirkei Avot, it says, and I think it's in chapter 6, Mishnah 14, it says, whoever reports saying in the name of the person who said it brings redemption to the world, which is telling us that we should always attribute what we know or think we know or what we're saying to someone else. And my facetious comment was that obviously she knew the Chicago manual of style and how to attribute the source of her information.
Yeah, so which is why a lot of people say B'Shem Omro, right? This was said in his mouth or from her knowledge. Great. So it's important for us to know that something is being said B'Shem Mordechai. I also think, to add on to what Larry just said, the Pirkei Avot piece is very interesting, and it's also good for us to know that, again, Esther is not sharing anything that is just hers. Right? She's saying it because of something that Mordecai ostensibly told to her, right? That she heard from him. And so it's not just Esther saying, and here's some information, but rather this is something that I learned from Mordecai and I'm sharing it in his name. Okay, Alan and then Paul.
I found it very intriguing to see that Mordecai told it to Queen Esther.
Oh, good.
And then it's only Esther reported to in Mordecai's name. One would think that it would be telling it to Esther, his niece, and not doing it as Queen
That's
Esther.
Sweet. Yeah.
And yet it may be that perhaps that it's being done to be said, well, he's telling it to her in her role as a queen, to make sure that she tells it to the king in what's taking place. But it seems out of place. It would seem that he would just be saying to Esther first and then queen later.
That's such a nice, I love that. That's such a nice, I did not notice that at all. That's a really, that's really sweet. And I mean, my mind is racing with like drashas you could give on this. There's something very sweet about, especially the way that you just explained it, Alan, that that the way in which he is regarding her, a relative of any kind, right, is with her title. Whereas the way that either she feels or the way that she is reporting back is not with a title. And yet we would think that it would be the opposite. So what does that say for their relationship? What does that say with her relationship to the king? Wow, beautiful. Really, really nicely done. Yeah, Paul.
The other question that comes up from this is that since Mordecai is presumably known to be Jewish, and Esther has not revealed her heritage, how much do they know about the relationship between Mordecai and Esther?
Who's the they?
Well, the king, for one thing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So does the king have any knowledge that Mordecai is actually someone who has a relationship, let alone a familial relationship with Esther? Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that we've heard of another point where it would tell us one way or the other if he knows or if he doesn't know. Leonard, then Norm, then Rebecca.
Commentary here in this book, and I don't know who this is, but anyway, it says that
some guy somewhere said something. Yeah, right. It's okay. But Shemara was just for the last few minutes. Now we're moving on. Yeah.
So as I was saying.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Yes. Plagiarism at its finest. Yeah.
Because it says that this thing became known to the king through Esther. In other words, Mordecai told Esther, who in turn told the king.
Yeah.
This wasn't done in the official way that such things are normally done. It was reported, in this unusual way so that Esther and Mordecai would become known and more valued by the king, rather than through some bureaucracy that deals with such things.
Yeah, really good point. Norm.
Mordecai has learned of this conspiracy, but he can't be certain about the extent of the conspiracy.
Okay.
So it is possible that had he reported it to whatever bureaucrat would be the appropriate one, that instead of successfully getting the information to the king and the other people who would protect the king, it might have simply meant that the conspiracy would have now included him because they were aware that he knew. He could have been putting himself, Esther, and the king at greater risk. But going to Esther made it there. And it's certainly true, so far as we know, that Esther has not revealed her Jewish identity.
Right.
But we don't have any reason to believe that it has to be a big secret.
Yeah.
So if the king or somebody else figures out, she has regular communication with Mordecai, is it because she's related or is Jewish or simply got to know him because she was from Shushan? We don't know. They don't know, and they probably don't care, because while we have a lot of information about Esther keeping it a secret, not revealing it, we don't have any indication that anybody else was trying to find it out. In fact, we have the opposite indication that everybody thought of her as being part of their tribe or nationality, and everybody liked Esther, and that's all for the good.
Okay, great. Rachel.
I was cheating, and I read Steinsaltz.
Okay, that's not cheating.
And Steinsaltz said, Esther reported the plot to the king in the name of Mordecai, with whom the king was unfamiliar. And I find that interesting because the whole contest for queen, I think it is Mordecai who is throwing isn't the right word, but is kind of guiding Esther through the process until she goes into the, harem of the potential brides or whatever we want to call it.
Right.
But, she spent a year in that space for women getting beautiful.
Sure.
And I would have thought that of those 80 plus women in that, each of them had some sort of adult, probably male, guidance, because all of these courtiers are trying to get the attention of the king and the power that would come with their protege being chosen as queen.
Yeah, interesting. And again, just to go back to this point that Alan made that I'm now stuck on, that you would have assumed then, right, that if we're going with your idea here, Rachel, that queen would have actually been used with her name the second time, not the first time, right? Because if that's something that is very important to the future of what they are doing or how they are presenting themselves, we would think that would be as they are presenting themselves to the king. Rebecca, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for 1 second, but Rebecca, go ahead.
So either, as Rachel's saying, Esther, very purposely says it in Mordecai's name, either because Mordecai's not known and she wants to elevate him and make him known to the king, or it could be that this confirms that Mordecai was known to the king and had some credibility. So by saying it in Mordecai's name, she's, giving this report further credence.
Okay, great. So I think that's going to actually lead us very nicely into the Rashi here. So if we could just look at Leonard, can you read for us the Rashi? And then, because they're sitting next to me, I think I heard Larry and Diane talking about the historical piece here. So were you talking about Cyrus? Oh, you weren't. Right. But did you get to the Cyrus piece? Oh, you didn't? Okay. Okay. Then I'll bring it up. Okay, Leonard, go ahead.
ויוודע הדבר למרדכי, שהיו מספרים דבריהם לפניו בלשון תורסי, והם יודעים שהיה מרדכי מכיר ב70 לשונות, שהיה מיושבי לשכת הגזית. Okay, so the matter was understood by Mordecai, or he learned of it, and they were speaking. They were speaking about the thing before him in the Tursi language, and they did not know that Mordecai knew 70 languages, and because he was a member of the apparently Sanhedrin.
Okay. So what question is Rashi answering?
How did he know? How did it become known to him?
Exactly. How did it become known to him? So there's this idea that something was made known to him, but we don't actually know how. There's nothing that says, if we go to the verse before, we just know that he was sitting in a place where he might have heard something, but we don't actually know how it became known to him, right? So we assume as the reader that he heard it, but as we talked about last class, and we're going to talk about right now, how do we know that he was close enough to hear that? How do we know that he understood their language? They probably weren't dumb, and so they were probably speaking a language that other people, like especially the king, wouldn't have understood, right? So Rashi's asking this question is, how did it become known to him? None of that is actually mentioned in the Megillah. So, okay, Barry, go ahead.
So this is a key turning point in the story. We're finding out now that Mordecai is just not a fellow. He's actually a member of the Sanhedrin. And this member of the Sanhedrin is sitting in the gate. So he's not like a beggar. He's a member of the Sanhedrin, purposely put, the story is putting him purposely in this position where he is able to hear this and pass the message on. This is in terms of the novel structure of the story, it's a key turning point here. And there's a foreknowledge of something's going to be happening, and he to pass this on.
Okay, so going back to Barry's usual comment that this is all intentional is great, and most likely was. Mordecai probably was in the right place at the right time for a reason, not just because he was lucky. What are the chances that he was actually on the Sanhedrin? Does anybody have any clue? Yeah, zero. Right. No chance. There was no chance that he was actually on the Sanhedrin. Yeah, Marshall? Oh, sorry. Marshall, go ahead.
Just another improbable thing that is the very old Assancino translation.
Yeah.
Josephus attributes it to information obtained from a Jewish slave of the conspirators. But this can hardly be more than a guess on his part.
Right. Great. Yeah, Rachel, go ahead. Right.
Just asking
Yeah.
about the authority of the Sanhedrin at this time in this place.
Right. Yeah, Stevie, and then Rebecca. Oh, and then Alan. Stevie first.
I would say, though historically the Sanhedrin dates to a later time and is a Greek word and so forth. In rabbinic thought, the Sanhedrin goes all the way back to Moses having 70 elders with it.
Right.
So, in rabbinic thought, it's perfectly natural, aside from the fact that he's, geographically at the wrong place.
Right. Okay. So Stevie's pointing out exactly what my question was going to be, but it's already been answered. What Rashi meant by him being on the Sanhedrin was not that he was actually on the Sanhedrin, right? What he meant was he was a really smart guy and he was surrounded by really smart people and he knew a lot of things that had he been on the actual Sanhedrin that we are talking about when we talk about the Great Sanhedrin, it's possible he would have known the same information. So it's not the Sanhedrin we are thinking about when we talk about the Sanhedrin in our history. But as Stevie pointed out, right, it's the same as saying, like that person is in Mensa, right? They might not actually be, but if they're very smart, it's possible that they could be, and therefore they would be the same level of intelligence. That might have been a bad example, but you get the idea that it's being used as not euphemism, but it's being used as a symbol for the type of intelligence and the type of connection that he had without him actually having been in the quote real Sanhedrin. Okay. Alan, Rebecca. Wow. Rebecca's abound. And then this Rebecca will probably say something. Oh, he said it? Okay.
So that explains it a little bit more. I was wondering why being on the Sanhedrin explains that he knew 70 languages. So I was trying to connect those two. So I guess if it's just implying that, he has a great deal of knowledge and that's what being on the Sanhedrin means.
I think it's that he had a great deal of knowledge. I think when we assume that people were on the Sanhedrin, we also assume that they needed to have access to lots of different, whether it was works or understandings, and therefore you needed to know different languages. Like someone who works in intelligence in an army, right, very often knows different languages to be able to understand what might be said by the other people they're encountering in their army. I was going to say studies. It's not what I mean. And their experiences. So I think that's another way that this is an answer, but it's a really good question that it's not really a proof text, right? It's just kind of saying he was smart, but there is a historical piece here that I'm going to bring up in a second, Rebecca, and I'm going to just look it up because I put it on my phone and then put it on my phone.
I didn't have a comment. I have a question.
Yeah, right.
So the Hebrew Rashi says Lishkat Gazit.
Yeah.
Which I understand Gazit has to do with the stones.
Yes.
It doesn't say Sanhedrin. Do we
Correct.
know that that is a one-to-one relationship? Is it always that Lishkat Gazit is Sanhedrin? Or?
Yes. But I also think it's a very, very good point I think what it's doing is making the point that this was symbolic even more so because it didn't actually say Sanhedrin. It just is using, what's the right word? Euphemism's not the right word. It's using symbolic. No, something more than symbolic, and it's not metaphorical. It's using a word that then reminds us of the Sanhedrin, and therefore we are implying that he had that type of knowledge. I can't think of what the word is. Sorry. Remez, yeah, thank you. So I think that's the answer here. Diane.
So I'm just fascinated with the notion of this Tarsian language.
Good.
Wondering whether it was in fact some real language. And so just cursorily looking on the internet, it's some version of Tarsian is some version of Tarsus.
Yeah.
Which was in Turkey. So, but apparently the only references to the Tarsian language are in rabbinic sources and not anyplace else. So I don't know if this is some made up name or.
I don't know if it's made up, but it definitely has connection to Turkey, which as of right now, we are not in, right? When we think about geographically where we are, it's not so far, but we don't believe that we are actually in Turkey. Larry?
Yeah, I'm continuing the language theme.
Okay, great.
So, like Diane, I looked up Tarsian.
Great.
And saw that it's the language of Tarsus,
Good.
which was a cosmopolitan center.
Good.
And so supposedly a variant of its language would be the cosmopolitan or lingua franca language of the region.
Yes.
So the whole concept of a lingua franca is, especially in Africa, where you literally have thousands of languages. We lived in Burkina Faso, which was called Upper Volta at the time, which was a country at the time of less than 5 million people with more than 100 languages and even more dialects. So how do people get along? So in West Africa, there were languages such as Jula and Hausa. In East Africa, Swahili. And these languages are a little bit like Pidgin in that they're grossly simplified so the people who understand different languages can understand them. So I don't know this to be the case. My assumption is that what Rashi was thinking, if he knew, was that Tarsian was this lingua franca, and that since so many people were in the capital of Shushan from all over the empire of Persia, they would be conversing in this lingua franca, and that's why he said Tarsian.
Yeah. Okay. Oh wow, there's lots of hands. Okay. Norm was first, and then Rebecca.
Tarsus is notable to me because, of course, that's where Jonah tries to go when he doesn't want to follow God's instruction.
Tarshish, yeah.
And it is, in fact, in the southeast corner of Turkey,
right?
Which quite likely was included, at least for a time, in the Persian Empire.
Good.
So it's not surprising there would have been some people from there speaking that language.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Not terribly surprising. Mordecai would have been familiar with that language, even if he didn't know 70 of them. So I think there's some significance and also legitimacy. They say that's what it is. Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, Rebecca.
I'm along the same line.
Yeah.
I also just looked it up online. Tarshish is also, there are thoughts that it might be also in Spain somewhere, in the southern part of Spain. So that was my comment.
Yeah, when I looked it up, not right this second, when I looked it up, it said something about Spain and Portugal, and then the deeper that you tried to connect it to Megillat Esther, then it started to bring up Turkey. So unclear if it was like renamed or because I then started to look it up in connection to a book that was closer to Turkey that it started to bring that up as a place that it was.
Considering that Rashi is sitting in France, south
right.
of France.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, Leonard. And then I'm going to connect us to some history here.
I just thought you might want to know that Tarsus is the birthplace of the Apostle Paul Tarsus.
Oh, great.
That was the way when Paul, that's when he had the revelation that came down that said he was no longer had to following the law. Tarsus.
Right. Yeah.
Great. Okay. See, you learn about all religions in this class. Okay. I'm going to just read this because I don't know the history well enough to just summarize it, but I thought this was very interesting. And this is from a website called Biojea, but it takes from the historical story of King Xerxes. Okay. So some modern opinions are that Ahasuerus was King Xerxes II, which we've already discussed, who at one point waged war against his brother, Cyrus the Younger. Okay, keep this in mind. Tarsus was the capital city of a region called Cilicia, I don't know how to say it, so sure. Eventually, a province in the Persian Median Empire. Cilicia, how do you say it?
Cilicia.
That was not one of the ways I said it. Cilicia chose to side with Cyrus the Younger, who eventually lost to Xerxes II. Okay, so are we understanding what's happening here? Prior to the war, Cilicia had a king. After siding with Cyrus the Younger and losing, the vassal king was dethroned and Cilicia was turned into an ordinary province. Having been internationally disgraced by Xerxes or Ahasuerus, it's no wonder that Tarsians, such as Bigtan and Teresh, were out to get him. The emphasis on them being both Tarsians and speaking Tarsian tongue, or Tarsis in our Megillah, may be there to tell us that these were Tarsian nationalists, zealous extremists plotting to assassinate a powerful enemy monarch to avenge the honor of their country, which that actually we talked about last class. So I wanted to give you a little bit of this history. Who knows if this is true, right? Who knows if these characters were exactly the same? Who knows if Bigtan and Teresh even knew of this history? But we have to assume that if this is true, that actually that makes a lot of sense. Why were these two people the one who were sitting there plotting against this? Why was Mordecai keyed into the fact that these might be people for whom they needed to know needed to know their language to be able to then tell the king, right? This actually does make a lot of sense historically to go back to our Megillah and be able to say, wait a second, this actually could have been very relevant to an internal strife that we would have never known about had we just read the Megillah. Okay, Rick has his hand up and there were a lot of chats that were just flying. Oh.
I just wanted to throw in a little detail.
Hello.
The word Torsi itself, can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Go ahead. You're great.
Good. Thank you. The tet shows that it's a foreign word, right? The taf is more Hebrew, and the tet is what they use when they want to show a foreign language. The same thing with the samach, I do believe. It's more rare than a sin. So it's just a double foreign word. I just like the detail of it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it also gives us a hint, right, into the fact that this wouldn't have been something that was known, right, to your point of it being then a foreign language. But yes, it does have both. Any other thoughts on this particular? Yeah, Alan.
It's not altogether clear that Ahasuerus was really Xerxes. I mean, that's making a major assumption that it's tied into a king. There's no record of any king Ahasuerus, and all of this could just be one giant story of what's taking place.
100%. I mean, but I think that's why it's so interesting that anybody goes out of their way to try to connect it to history, right? I'm teaching a class at HUC right now for DELIT students, for people who are wanting to become teachers, to become educators. And the class that I'm teaching, and it's not all to Jews, but the class that I'm teaching is the importance of teaching Jewish text. And one of the things that we talk about is the fact that anytime you translate something, it's going to become its own interpretation. It doesn't matter what language you're translating into. As soon as you take it away from the original, it becomes an interpretation. So too, someone going into a text and saying, hey, let me find historical implication, which I just shared with all of you, but I read it. Someone else had to actually come up with those connections. That's someone wondering, hey, I don't have enough context to really understand this. The rabbis decided, hey, I'm going to use language. I'm going to use my own knowledge of Tanakh, etc., to come up with my interpretations and my commentaries. A historian probably said, wait a second, this sounds a lot like this other story that I'm going to connect it to. The timing works out, the geography works out, I'm going to connect it. So it's all interesting commentary, and you're completely correct, Alan, that we have no idea what is fact and what is capital T true. And at the same time, for us to understand this Megillah, bringing in all these different pieces allows us to also be able to bring this to life in a way that now we are understanding it in the 21st century. Yeah, Diane.
So if you think about it as literature, so the audience for this piece, at least may not have been Jewish originally. It might have been Persian.
Sure.
And they knowing something of their history, we don't know when this was written, and this may have been written after Xerxes, and so it may
Right.
have been written as some kind of historical fiction.
Sure. It also could have been written as a satire against a historical story in order to share political views, right? In 3,000 years after people have lived through the 21st century, I won't be here, but my guess is that there will be at least some satire written about what's going on in all of these different countries and all of the political situations all over the world, right? We're not going to get away with having nothing written about our time of life. So too, it's very possible that someone wrote a story about characters to mimic his political characters that they were dealing with, who they had opinions about, because it was easier to do so through a novel, so to speak, than it was to actually write about the situation. Okay, Leonard, and then we're gonna finish this chapter, guys. It's gonna be so exciting.
So this,
Yeah, we should. Yeah, Leonard.
so real quick over here, going back about 20 minutes or so, you were looking for a word. I think the word you were looking for was illusion.
Oh, yeah, it could be an illusion. Thank you. That definitely wasn't the word I was thinking of, but it's a smarter word than I was probably thinking of. Okay. The Siyum will be tomorrow lunch. Okay, you can all show up. So, all right, we are going to, yeah, you can sponsor it. Rabbi Klickfeld makes that joke every year on Yom Kippur that he sponsored the Kiddush, and people laugh every year. And I'm like, you just made this joke last year, but people think it's hysterical. Okay, it's good. Rabbis can get away with the same joke every year because we don't have good material. So, okay, let's finish this chapter, and then next week we'll go on to the third chapter. By the way, I just want to point out that the third chapter, which I had prepared for today, in case we had gotten to it, it has very little Rashi, which is really interesting. It's actually the chapter I know the best because it was the chapter that I started reading at Sinai when I was 8 years old. But it's really interesting that the first chapter that mentions Haman doesn't have as much Rashi on it. So I brought a few other commentaries, but that's just an aside. So you have something to look forward to. Okay, last verse of chapter 2. Who wants to read it for us? Yeah, Rebecca, go ahead. It's a Friedman morning. That's that's right.
Vayivukash hadavar vayimatse vayitalu shnehem al eitz vayikatev b'sefer divrei hayamim lifnei hamelach.
Okay, before anybody says anything, because I think people are going to have a lot to say, Rick, go back to your original point in class today and talk about the beginning of this verse.
Okay. Vayevukash, so that's a passive. Is that nifal? I don't know.
Pual, I'm being told.
Pual.
I am not your grammarian. Yeah.
But it's passive, right? Is it intense? I don't know. The matter hadavar was bikesh is requested. I guess it's related. I don't know. Vayimatse, and it was found. So that's also passive, right? Like motzi, brought out, found. Vayitalu, I think that's more active.
Yep.
They weren't passively killed. They were it was an active verb, shenehem al eitz, which is a precursor, a foreshadowing of things happening to people. I won't reveal it for anybody who doesn't know. I'm going to keep going. Vayikatev. So there's lots of verbs, very short action verbs, phrases happening.
Good.
Very,
so we've
very dense.
Thank you.
I'll stop there. Okay.
No, that was great. And sorry for putting you on the spot, but that was exactly what I expected.
Like it.
So we've talked about this before in other verses that have had similar rhythm to them. Verses that have a lot of action often, and this is going to make sense to us as English speakers, often have verb after verb after verb, but they don't all go together necessarily, right? Vayevukash hadavar, vayimatze, vayitalu. Those are three very different things. right? And they didn't all happen right away, right? There had to be time in between them. And then obviously Vayikatev later on. But we see this in Shemot quite a bit, actually. And then we also see it a little bit in Genesis, especially around the Akedah. But there are moments in Torah and in Tanakh in general where verb after verb after verb are shared. And not only does it do something to us with the rhythm of the words and when it's read, but it packs a lot into one verse for us to know that something important is happening, not only in quick succession, but with a level of importance that is not just, and they were wandering through the garden, right? There's not a laissez-faire feeling to this. There's a lot of action and a lot of importance. So Rebecca, why don't you translate the verse for us? And then we'll talk about it a little bit.
The matter was looked into and was found. And they impaled the two of them on the tree, on the stake.
Vayitalu literally means to be hung. So I don't know why it says impaled, but it's okay. Continue.
Okay, and they hung the two of them on the tree. And it was written in the book of things, in the book of annals, in the book of days, at the king's request.
Yeah. What's Divrei Hayamim and how to... Yeah, Chronicles. So it's interesting, right, that even in the translation here, it doesn't say Chronicles, right? But so it could have been something different, but it's interesting for us to know that Divrei Hayamim, when we talk about Divrei Hayamim, that we mean in Chronicles. Okay, questions?
But in this case, does it mean the king's behest? It's not our Chronicles, but the king's, the royal book of, their records.
Could be. Yeah. Just interesting that it's the same exact term, but yeah. Yeah, Rebecca.
I have a question because I don't have the first chapter.
Oh, yeah.
Is it the same book where they asked to write what happened to Vashti? Is it the same?
No.
I was curious.
I'm pretty sure not. I'll try to find the exact word. Stevie, you go while I find it, but I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but let me find it.
I was just going to say that in chapter 6, it's Sefer HaZichronot.
Yeah.
So it's a different term that's used there when the king can't sleep.
That wasn't a lot.
Referring to the same book.
Maybe.
Or just referring to something being recorded down.
For Zichronot, this story is told, but so it could be the same book, but
the matter with Vashti, I'm looking for it right this second. The matter with Vashti was written down as a way of people not doing it anymore. Sorry, 19?
Verse 19.
Let it be written into the
laws.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it's not even referred to as a book at all. It was just written down in the laws and in the
That's a very different.
A Sefer Chok U'Minhag? Where do you see that? Oh, you're looking at a commentary. Okay. The other thoughts, comments around the table or online? Yeah, Marshall.
Since Rebecca translated the word by Yitlu as impaled, I just want to share Robert Alter's insight.
Yeah, great.
The Hebrew appears to say we're hanged on a tree, but the historical evidence points to impalement.
Oh.
Not hanging as a customary form of execution in the ancient Near East. In many instances, the condemned person was put to death in some other fashion, and his impaled body was then displayed as a form of humiliation.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so who is that? Is that Alter? Yeah. So it's interesting that what Alter is. I mean, this goes back to the point of any translation is an interpretation, right? Because the word here does mean to hang, right? Or that they were hanged. And yet what Alter and what Marshall shared with us is that was after they were impaled. So the translation that is used here, the translation is, they're both correct. The translation is correct and the Megillah is correct. Yeah, Marshall.
Since I normally don't use the word impalement,
yeah,
I had to look it up to see what the word impalement meant.
Oh, okay.
And just a definition I had was AI overview. Being impaled means having a person's body pierced by a sharp pointed object, with the item remaining embedded in the wound.
Right.
It is distinct from a standard stab wound because the penetrating object, like a piece of glass, a metal, or shard, or a knife, stays in place, often causing severe internal damage or controlling heavy bleeding.
You don't watch enough crime. Yeah, I knew exactly what impaled meant. Leonard and then Rachel.
I was going to say that Steinsaltz seems to disagree with Alter.
Okay.
It says that it seems that hanging was the preferred method of execution by the Persian monarchy, as it served to display publicly the offender's dishonorable end.
Read that last part again. To defend?
As it serves to display publicly the offender's
the offender's
dishonorable end.
That makes sense, I
they
guess.
died dishonorably.
Right. The Megillah is emphasizing the display, not how they actually were killed, right? Okay, who did I call on next? Rachel and then Larry.
Quick tangent. If you don't recognize the term impalement, you're not reading enough medieval historical fiction.
Yeah. Okay, great. Larry, we got to you quicker than I expected.
I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I don't know if this is supporting what Rick said or not.
Yeah.
The beginning is so concise. Vayivukash. So this is the investigation. So they don't use the word chakira or anything in modern Hebrew. It's one word. In my midrash, it's an entire chapter. There's an entire a police serial type of thing.
And the graphic novel today.
No. Well,
sorry, I don't mean to derail you.
Only because I think people got bored about it. But and then Vayivakash and then Vayimatse, and it was found.
Yeah.
Right. But behind those two words, you can imagine there was perhaps an entire investigation and interrogation.
Exactly.
They were found guilty, and then they were yitalu, impaled, hung, whatever, put on top of that.
Yeah.
Since you asked about the graphic novel.
Yeah, it's not a Rashi class without the graphic novel told by Larry.
So it's interesting that in the previous verse, there is a language, which I don't know if is made up or not.
Right. Yeah.
Right? That Bigtan and Teresh are actually speaking, and Mordechai is obviously listening to. And it has here that Mordechai doesn't deliver the message directly to Esther, but through an intermediary, which my assumption is, because it appears before, that this is Haggai, who is the keeper of the harem. But here in the verse 23, we see the interrogation because the two suspects are hung upside down.
Oh, interesting.
They're being tortured so that they will reveal what's happened.
Which is really, I'm just going to pause you for a second. I've never thought about this, but it doesn't mean that they died. Right? We assume, because we assume that when someone is hung on a tree, that means that they've been hanged so that they are brought to their death. But that's true. But it could be that this is actually a closer read, that they're being hanged to then respond to questions.
Yeah, but here it's not the eights.
Oh.
I like that. They're hung up here, but they actually are impaled, and they're impaled, and the stake is going up through their bodies for the display. Is the commentary? Yeah, you see that?
I do. I have my own book. I could open it.
Okay. Yeah. And then the king is telling the story to his scribe. So the image here is that the Divrei Hayamim are the chronicles,
Yeah.
and capital C and lowercase c, of the king. And then those chronicles are stored in a cupboard next to the king's bed. So it's telling us, foreshadowing later on when he wants to he's an insomniac and he wants to be bored to put to sleep, he will call someone to come and take a scroll and then to read it to him.
Wow. Right. Right, exactly. Well, you know.
Just a great
Okay, Leonard Marshall.
Hi. So earlier I was going to make a bad joke.
Oh. But now you're gonna make it now?
No, I was, from the word impalement, I was going to say something about the Pale of Settlement.
Yes, sure.
But I looked it up, and it turns out it's the same word. Who knew?
Huh.
Because a pail is actually a pointed stick. And so therefore, a picket fence is an example of a pail. And so therefore, it's like a fence, or it later became a boundary or a region or whatever. So actually, the Pale of Settlement is actually exactly the same word as impalement.
There you go.
No lousy joke.
Yeah, no, that was great. Okay, Marshall, and then Rick, and then we're gonna read the Rashi before we finish class. Can someone give Marshall a microphone?
Following Leonard's wonderful insight, I'm wondering where the term gallows humor came about.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, Rick.
Did you want to go to when Haman meets his demise? Because that's chapter 7. It doesn't say there that he was killed. It just says he was impaled.
Right.
So,
Right. That was the point that Stevie made off the microphone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just saw it, so I figured I'd bring it up.
Yeah. No. Thank you. Let's read the Rashi very quickly, and then we'll conclude. Go for it, Rebecca.
Vayikatev b'sefer divrei hayamim, and it was written in the book of days, the annals, the archives. Hatova she'asa Mordechai lamelech, the good or the favor that Mordechai did for the king.
What does that mean?
That was the important part that was recorded, that Mordechai did something good for the king.
Yeah. Which is really interesting, right? That I bet if I went around this room before we just read that and said, what was it that was written down? That wasn't what I thought would have been written down, right? It would have been the whole story before that. So the fact that Rashi thinks and is giving kind of some rachmanis actually to the king to say, what was written down was the fact that Mordechai did a mitzvah, that Mordechai did a really good thing to try to save him. Before I call him Barry, I want to just point out one more thing that I just remembered that I forgot to say. What does the word bikesh mean? To request, right? It can mean to search, but to search comes from the idea that you're requesting to find something or requesting to know something. So I do think that when we were looking at this graphic novel that's making its way around the table that Larry was reading to us, this idea that it wasn't just an investigation, but rather really a request of knowledge, which when we think of an investigation, there's a forcefulness behind that. There's a way of pressuring someone to get something. And Hebrew does have words for pushing people to give them information, right? For an investigation. And a bakasha or a request is not that word. So it's interesting that it doesn't seem as intimidating or as intense as we think of an investigation to be. Barry, and then we're going to close.
So in terms of the structure of the novel, nowhere is it known as Jew. Mordecai is not known as Jewish. Esther is not known as Jewish. It's in the archive that this person Mordecai did this favor.
Yeah. So we do know that. Well, okay. I'm not going to get into it because actually, okay, it will take us too long. The place we're going to go next is to introduce Haman. Oh, thank you. We're not going to do that every time we say his name. or I'm going to stop teaching this class. But we are going to get to the third chapter. If people want to look into it, feel free to do so. Just a reminder, there's not going to be a ton of Rashi. So this might be a good place for those of you who have other commentaries in front of you to bring them, to look at them, to share them with the class. And obviously we'll still look at the Rashis as well. Have a great week. I will make a decision by next week about what day we're going to be having this class moving forward.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.